Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We saw a press conference by federal ministers a little while ago on which, of course, there was a lot said on the efforts by the government as far as reducing government expenditure, reducing circular debt, removing obstacles to foreign investment, improving the performance of state-owned enterprises, all of those things as updated by a Minister for Information also. We'll be talking about the efforts government is making in trying to curb smuggling, the effects of that, of course, the dollar overall as far as clamping down there, and of course we saw dollar come down a little bit. A lot of that rupee strengthening. We'll be talking about the overall effects on the economy of these measures that are being taken by the government at this time. But before that, we'll also be talking a little bit about the political scenario with, of course, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari saying categorically that a delay of no later than 120 days as far as the elections, the next general elections are concerned, is acceptable to them. Will it have ramifications? We'll also be talking about a little bit about the legal situation with regard to two of the important cases. We saw the plea rejected as far as the PDM is concerned, the ramifications of that on the legal side of things. Also, of course, the judges, the judiciary, and the latest case about loans regarding the judiciary, and of course the way that the current judicial process is aligned to look at some measures, whether it has any ramifications, the optics of it. All of those are, I think, important questions for us, for people today. I have with me Irfan Ghauri, who is a current affairs analyst, also a senior journalist. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Muneeb Qadir, who is a legal expert. Thank you for joining us. Before I go to Irfan Saab, Muneeb, let's talk about the two important cases. As a lawyer, how do you look at the way that the issue of this, as far as the PDM is concerned, the 13th November confirmation of, as far as the audio leaks case is concerned, how are you looking at it, the latest development there, particularly as what happened today?
Yeah. It's extremely unfortunate that the Supreme Court has decided to refute all the objections which are raised by the PDM government as to the independence of the judicial panel, because it's very worrying that at least two of the judges on that panel, Justice Ijazul Hassan Sahab and the Chief Justice himself, Mr. Umar Atab Bandial, they have been implicated in the audio leaks themselves, which are the subject of the inquiry that the PDM government had wanted to be undertaken by the commission that they had formed. But now that the legal validity of the commission is under question before the Supreme Court, the very bench that has been constituted at the apex court level in itself raises questions about due process and natural justice. The fact being that, as I've said, many of the judges on the panel are themselves implicated in those audio leaks, with the Chief Justice as a mother-in-law involved in the call, whereas a phone call between the Chief Minister of that time, Chief Minister of Punjab, referring to a particular judge of the Supreme Court who is on this very bench, which has today decided that they would reject the previous PDM government's objections to the bench, hearing the please changing constitution of the three-judge commission. So it's extremely unfortunate because, as is often said, justice must not only be done but also be seen to be done, and one wonders how that could ever be achieved if you've got judges sitting on a panel being effectively judges in their own cause.
Let me come back to you. Muneeb, I want to, of course the optics are important, but if this was not such a high profile matter between individuals of that kind of importance, would it not be treated in the same way? That's a relevant question. I want to come to that. I want to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to go to Irfan Saab. Irfan Saab, this is also one of the cases, of course, that we saw. The other cases, of course, again pertains to the judiciary with regard to loans, and of course that's also been dismissed. Is it, in your opinion, is it a practice that should perhaps, it's one of those normal things that happens? Do you think it's because it's in the media that it's taken that kind of importance? Or do you think that such measures such issues should perhaps be avoided. Again, to what Muneeb is saying, perhaps give an impression of the kind we want to see the unbiased judges, of course, and I'm not saying that they're not unbiased, but I'm talking about the impression, the optics of it generally.
Mahrukh, thank you very much, and I think it's very important that when it comes to the judges, the optics and their, this is the way if they fix the cases, the benches, they matter a lot, and especially in our context, when it's everything is so politicized, and then when it comes to media and all the trolling and all that, so they should also be taking into consideration these things. Otherwise, what happens is that people start, criticizing these institutions, and it damages their credibility as well. So they have to be. Of course, we should all have respect for the judiciary, every institution, and when it comes to superior judiciary, but the judges themselves, in their conduct, in the way they take up the cases, or they reject any petition, they have to, one is the legal aspects, of course, they have to see that, but it shouldn't be, as you said, the optics, they also matter a lot.
Fair enough. Muneeb, the optics or the image of impartiality which we talk about, is it of course, it is important when we look at that old saying, as you mentioned also, that justice should be seen to be done. But are we attaching too much importance to that image of impartiality? Because of course, one aspect of it is that these are normal day-to-day measures and issues that crop up with regard to other government institutions, with regard to other government functionaries also, but the way that they're taken up perhaps in the media, and of course the day and age that we live in, it's important that everything and every word that is used by their lordships, that is said by their lordships, news attributed to them, has gained unnecessary importance and prominence. Isn't that true?
I don't believe so, particularly. I think that this is not a routine matter. This is something extraordinary, which the Supreme Court bench had to deal with, in the sense that, number one, audio leaks, they don't happen all the time. They don't happen every day. And even if they were to become a regular feature, which they have in Pakistani politics, one way or the other.
Have we seen any action? But have we seen any action taken on any other audio leaks also? I mean, there have been a couple of audio leaks.
The substance of the audio leaks that are under consideration before the Supreme Court and the commission which was formed by the previous PDM government, the content of those audio leaks are extraordinary in the sense that, your topmost judges are implicated in those calls, and one needs to know, as members of the public, we all need to know, and we all have an interest in the matter as to whether those sitting at the very top of the judicial ladder are influenced by members of their family or not, because otherwise public confidence in judicial impartiality will be undermined, and that's not good for any functioning, healthy democracy. So ultimately, it's a question of rule of law, it's a question of democracy, and so the kind of media attention that this whole topic of audio leaks has gained, I think it's wholly justifiable. It is, because this is something that everyone has a stake in. Hence, that's why I say that for optics purposes, for optics sake only, if I were to leave other considerations aside, it's not a very good sign that the Supreme Court, in my subjective view, did not adequately address the concern which was raised by the lawyer for the previous PDM government, which is that we need to ensure that the commission which you are supervising, the validity of which you are supervising, the judicial panel at the Supreme Court in itself has to be impartial, and its neutrality has to be beyond doubt, because that's the thing that, the test for impartiality is, would it appear to a reasonable observer whether there is even the slightest risk of any prejudice or bias within the judicial panel, and if a reasonable observer to conclude that there is such a risk.
The credibility of audio leaks themselves, like I said, there have been other audio leaks also pertaining to a lot of other people. Have they been investigated at all? Have we looked at anything conclusive come out of those?
Unfortunately, nothing conclusive has happened, not even with regards to other people who've been, other than the judges who have been implicated in audio leaks. And that is why I think that the decision to form a commission would have had effects on, other audio leaks as well. But and also as to the admissibility of audio leaks as evidence, that is a very important outstanding issue which has not been resolved. Even though audio leaks, there have been series of them for.
Do we necessarily want to make audio leaks an issue in our judicial process, and how credible are they? And whether they can be investigated, and whether they should be made a part of our hardcore investigative process, political process also. Let me come back to you on that. Irfan sir, that's also an important question, because we saw a lot of audio leaks pertaining to a lot of variety of issues.
Yes.
Do we want to give them that credence? Do we want to, this is not a legal question. This is a political question for us.
Now it's, as I said, since so many things, here it's so many polarizations, and when it comes to some issue, very easily it becomes, a political issue, and in such a situation, if there would be some selective, cases taken up, so there will be, criticism coming, and there will be the people who would be pointing out,
right,
on impartiality, and this is what I think needs to be. This is what needs to be very carefully looked by the honorable judges, because when there is any question when it comes to your impartiality, or if there is a little doubt in such a case, a judge sitting there, there will be so many questions raised by the people on that bench.
It's important. Yeah. Let me go. Muneeb, what about the other matter as far as, the loans issue is concerned? How do you look at that? Do you think it was, it's one of those things that, again, has gained unnecessary sensationalism in media?
Which particular issue are you talking about?
I'm talking about the question of, as far as the judiciary is concerned, the loans that were given to certain members of the judiciary, and,
yes,
which is perhaps been
absolutely
made more of.
Absolutely. So, the thing that we also focused upon as members of the legal fraternity, as far as I'm concerned, but also from a political perspective, is that, a lot of cases that come before the judges, they are extraneous to merely legal considerations. So these are areas where, political factors blend into legal factors, and you cannot isolate one from the other. So with that regard, whether it be, the audio leaks probe commission, or the other cases that you've referred to, one has to make sure that nothing outside the courtroom is influencing the judges and the verdicts that they are reaching. So any kind of noise which has been created in the media is absolutely justified, and we need to be talking about these issues, because ultimately the rule of law impinges upon, and constitutionality itself impinges upon, the impartiality of judges. So I think that these are issues which need to be talked about. And also, referring to one of your previous questions, you asked me about the credence of, or the credibility of audio leaks. So as evidence, the point is that audio leaks, once they are in the public domain, they are very hard to set aside. We cannot avoid talking about the content of audio leaks in our public discourse, even if their credibility as legal evidence is yet to be determined. At the very least, in our political parlance, the content of audio leaks becomes public knowledge, public information. Public information, in my opinion, can never be extracted from the consideration in terms of legal evidence. That figures into the equation in some way or the other. You cannot entirely omit reference to the content of audio leaks once they become public information. So these are issues which need to be determined by impartial panel. And once again, just to conclude my argument on this point, it's the audio leaks themselves
but
implicate,
Muneeb,
as I
the
said,
question of how important they are in the political realm, in terms of how they influence, or they are taken by perhaps voters, or how they're looked at by the general public, is one aspect of it, is it not? And whether they should be, again, like you said, whether they have actionable consequences in the law, and whether they have evidentiary value. All of those things are, those are two separate questions, right?
Those are two separate yet interrelated questions because, first of all, yes, we have to determine, what is the source of these audio leaks? Where are they coming from? And of course, the legality of those audio leaks, whether private communications have been tampered with, which would be wholly unconstitutional, illegal. And if something is unconstitutional, of course, it does reflect upon the admissibility of those audio leaks as credible evidence. But at the same time, like I've said, this is where lines start getting blurred, which is that once something becomes public information, I think it's unwise to expect the public and those who are stakeholders in the politics and even in the running of the constitution and legal affairs of the country to completely disregard the content of audio leaks. Hence, I think it was a very useful step which was taken by the previous PDM government with the formation of a commission with very credible judges on it. And now that the Supreme Court has rejected that the bench be reconstituted as to the legality of that commission, I think that it would create hurdles and unnecessary hurdles in the way of determining these legal questions, the credibility of audio leaks as evidence and the admissibility. And like you also
before
mentioned,
I go to Irfan Sahab here, legally speaking, this judgment, does it exclude all audio leaks, or does it just say that as far as this particular audio leak is concerned, it's not relevant, it's not substantial enough, or it has no value?
In the instant case, the focus is on the audio leaks that implicated politicians and their alleged nexus with the judges. In this instant case. But of course, it would have further ramifications for other cases of audio leaks as well. But at the same time, we should keep in mind that one mustn't overestimate the weight or the value of Supreme Court's judgment today, because it's not on substantive issues, on the substance of audio leaks itself. The judgment, rejecting the PDM's demands and objections to the bench hearing the pleas, is pertaining to procedural matters only. The substantive issues are yet to be decided. The very point upon which the formation of the three-judge commission hinged in the first place. But unfortunately, what today's judgment has done is it has slowed down the process which had been set in motion to finally reach some legal conclusions as to the substance, the credibility, the admissibility of audio leaks. And that is what I find particularly unfortunate.
Fair enough. Thank you so much for your time, Muneeb. Thank you for joining us. Irfan Sahab, let's talk about the crackdown. We've been looking at dollar rising for a while. We've also known the government has been concerned about the smuggling issue. As far as the currency is concerned, we've also seen the interbank discrepancy with the market rate. The government's effort towards regulation of that and its efforts to the crackdown itself, how are you looking at this? We've also seen, of course, the effects coming out recently, the dollar getting down, the rupee strengthening already.
Yes. Mahrukh, I think this is one of the issues that should have been taken very long ago when the dollar was, rising with such a unprecedented pace. Not only the dollar but the smuggled good, because we already we are short of revenues, and in that the smuggling that either it is coming through our border with Iran or with the Afghan border, that has a major factor. And you would be surprised if you go in the market, especially on motorway, you travel on motorway and go any motorways service station, you would find Iranian biscuits, Iranian those goods. I mean, if they come through legal channels, there is no issue. But if it is coming through smuggled ways, it's a loss to the national exchequer, number one. Number two, your industry in the country, which is already suffering a lot, it damages to the industry as well. Same is the case with the dollars. Not only the smuggling but the hoarders. I mean, the people during the last 1 year or so, I have met so many people who have been saying that instead of keeping money in investing in banks, I mean in any other business, or keeping it in bank, buy the dollars. And the people have been doing it as a source of revenue, without taking into consideration its implication on on the as a nation how it is, you know, and this is, I think, it's one of the steps that should be appreciated, that this I mean, not only the crackdown on smuggling of goods and dollars, but also the money changers and those who have been involved in these illegal tactics.
Let me come back on that. We'll be taking a short break, after which we'll continue to talk about the economy and the measures that the government is taking, the Special Facilitation Council meeting that was held today, and what kind of effects can we expect on the economy in the recent future. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We have with us Shaaf Najeeb, who's a research fellow with Pakistan Institute of Development Economics. Thank you for joining us. Shah Sahab, overall, as far as the situation at this time is concerned, we're talking about the measures the government is taking to curb the smuggling that we've seen. What are the ramifications of these developments, in your opinion? Are they going to be short term? Are they going to be quick? Because we are looking at dollar coming down, the rupee strengthening a bit. Of course, there has been, unfortunately, a general despondency with regard to our economic situation. Unfortunately, one has to contend and agree with that. How do you look at the measures that are being taken at this time? How do you overall look at that?
Well, I think, of course, smuggling has been a major issue for Pakistan, particularly smuggling of various imported commodities and staple crops, right? And recently, the government has taken measures in order to curb that smuggling. But I think, as you pointed out, at this point, these are some short-term measures. And in the long run, of course, we need to devise a system where we actually are able to completely eradicate this, you could say, smuggling of commodities as well as smuggling of currency, which has been quite a major issue in the recent years, especially ever since the change of regime in Afghanistan. Right. But right now, I think, as you talked about how this has helped bring down the exchange rate, especially in the open market as well, and close the gap. But still, dollar availability remains a major issue, and that is because of the fact that, let's be honest, we do not earn enough dollars. So I think in the long run, we also need to bring in policies where we start earning more dollars, so there is a supply, because even if the rate is coming down and the dollar isn't available, that means that the necessary transactions are not happening. So that is not resolving our issue even in the short term as well. So we need to put in place short term as well as long term measures to completely eradicate these problems that we have been facing for long now.
Okay, fair enough. But in terms of, again, Irfan Sahab, we need to take these measures to see a long-term effect. But as far as the economic situation generally is concerned, it's been very volatile. Do you think it's also uncertainty that's contributed to that, and things perhaps now that they've settled down in the regard that, of course, we are looking at a, election commission also saying that there is a certain time in which we are looking at the elections. We also, overall, the situation seems less volatile at this time, and that's contributing?
Mahrukh, political stability, that is very important. If you talk to the people in the streets, if you talk to the businessman, everybody is waiting for the outcome of the next elections, which will be the government that would be formed, and those things, they would matter, because the people, nobody is ready to take risks, that they don't know that what would be the next in next couple of months, I mean next few months, if elections are held, which type of government will come, and those things, they would matter. But right now, there is a need that the steps that the political governments, that would be difficult for them to take because of the political considerations. This is the time that these steps, the interim government, they would have to take those measures, or at least they would they should have some foundation to that. Otherwise, what happens is that if one party comes into government, the other party, the political system is such that when it comes to the loss-making entities, we have been hearing about their privatization for a long time, but a party, when it is in it's in government, when they come in government, it becomes difficult for them because the other parties, they start opposing it. So such things which are necessary for our long term, there is a need to lay foundation of those things, so that when the next
So you think the caretaker government, of course the mandate is a little more, it's a little more extensive than normal caretaker governments.
Yes.
But do you think that they will be, they can, perhaps this is the right time for them to carry this forward? Because you're saying, of course, it doesn't have that kind of political pull one has to contend.
Mahrukh, one is the legislation that the previous government, before they going, they have enhanced the powers of the interim government. The other thing is that in a situation that they have come where it seems that it is going to take 3, 4, 5, 6 months for the election, so they have time for that. It's not that they would be, it's not that they have to go for elections within 60 days or 90 days. So this is, I think, ample time, at least, you put the things in the right direction.
Fair enough. Shaaf, there is also, something that was said today was, a term that was used was holistic approach as far as the government is concerned. It was about the fact that there is a whole of government, to adopt a whole of government approach, I'm going to quote, to the finance ministry's various divisions and operate holistically and consistently as a team. How is this different from how things were being run earlier, in your opinion?
Well, I think there is absolutely a need for an increased coordination between the state institutions, right? Because when we see that there are multiple institutions that are doing similar kind of tasks at different levels, maybe you could say that some might be doing it at federal level, some might be doing it at provincial level, right? But there needs to be a coordination in between them, so that a policy that or a direction that we are setting, let's say in the provinces, that is aligned to what the policies are being, you could say, being set at the federal level. Because when the federation is moving in one direction and the provinces in 4 different directions, that is going to create more chaos, that is always going to create more uncertainty, right? And that is also, in terms of economic agents, it's going to give them a very negative message. So there has to be an increased coordination. But of course, coordination...
This is in the background of the 18th Amendment.
Yeah, no, you see, they can have their operational and policy independence, yet there can be coordination, because there are, you could say, forums created where all these parties and all these governments do coordinate. So that needs to be implemented properly. You know, like the Council of the Common Interest, or maybe National Tax Council that has been created for coordinating on the tax policy. So these things need to be streamlined so that there is a sense of direction of the entire country, within which all these state institutions and political governments, of course, move in their, you could say, constitutional limit and constitutional powers in the directions that they want to. But if the message coming from 4 different authorities or 4 different messages...
Do you think it's also because we recently saw, not too long ago, governments of different political parties in provinces, and perhaps for them to work in tandem with the federal government became difficult for that reason also?
I think if the political parties are not able to put behind their political differences in order to devise a national plan to take the country forward, then we need to question them, and then we need to, you could say, our feedback mechanism is through elections. So when the elections come and we realize that maybe these are the political parties, or these are the political personalities that have, you could say, hampered national coordination, then we need to think about rejecting those and bringing in new faces who, while maintaining their own individual political identity, also talk more about, when in power, talk more about, and you could say, take decisions that are for national benefit. Because at the end of the day, when the country will grow, only then will these political parties be able to grow politically in this country as well.
Irfan sir, this is something important, because we also, this was a question that kept coming up earlier also, the fact that, on a national level, we talk about a nationalistic stance or nationalism, and then there's also the political parties in their own, their own way of looking at things, which is different for any many political parties. Their stance on various issues are likely different. You know, even now, if you look at the last government, which was an amalgamation of 12 political parties, already we see that, you know, manifestos are different, the thought process is different, the history, political history is different, the growth is also different. Do you think it's important, like Shaaf Sahab is saying, for political parties when they come into government, for governance, to put that mandate, to put that manifesto behind them and focus on, like Shaaf Sahab is saying, that one agenda, which is for the governance of the country, regardless of their political affiliations?
Mahrukh, it is very difficult for the political parties, you know, to be aligned on everything. But when it comes to some certain issues that are, you know, common for everybody, and that especially they relate to the masses, they relate to the nation.
But economy is one such
the
issue
economy,
now.
extremism. Similarly, when it comes to, you know, good governance, accountability, building of institutions, they should be the common, you know, I mean, they should be the common issues for everybody, as Shaaf Sahab has mentioned. And there is, you know, if any political party or any politician who becomes a hurdle into that, there is a need that they should be identified. As I was discussing, I have been, you know, listening this, you know, while we were covering, you know, different in different beats, that this institution has been making losses for so many years. PIDE,
White elephant.
White elephants,
yes.
and all. So we have been listening these things since the time of General Musharraf sir.
So successive governments
So
have failed.
successive governments they came, but nobody has come up with, you know, with some concrete measures that how. Similarly, this issue of circular debt, that has become such a burden on us. So there is a need that whatever the solution, it should be a viable solution. On the one hand, we know that we have sovereign guarantees that we have given. So, but that doesn't mean that there is no light on the end of the tunnel. So there is a need that on certain issues, the political parties, they they should sit and they should have a common, you know.
Shaaf Sahab, again, what Irfan Sahab is talking about is perhaps, you know, another way of looking at the charter, which was earlier something which was talked about as far as an economic charter is concerned. The former Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif Sahab saying it to, you know, other political leaders and you know, of coming out and talking, all stakeholders sitting together. This is a conversation that's been there for a while now. Do you think it's likely to ever happen?
Well, you see, I think we talked about this in one of your previous programs as well, and I think I said at that time again, and I'll repeat that if there is any sort of agreement or a unified policy framework that is going to develop, that has to come through the parliament. Because parliament is where the people elect and send their representatives to make the decisions for themselves. For me, any agreement outside the parliament holds no value, at least for me.
And a parliament is always an amalgam of different political parties,
yes,
because there's a presence usually of an opposition and a government.
Exactly. So if any combined agenda has to come, it has to come through the parliament. Now, what does that agenda have to focus on? That is again a very important question, and that has to focus on reforms, because unless we bring about structural reforms, we are not going to see, you could say, the changes and you could say growth within Pakistan, because these short-term measures have actually landed us in problems in the later years, because when we try to bring in an immediate solution, we often miss out its future liability, and that has continued to you could say make the entire situation worse, be it on the economy front, be it in energy or any other sector. So it has to be a long-term plan that must start from reforms and in each and every sector.
Fair enough. Thank you so much, Irfan Ghauri Sahab. Thank you for your time. Muneeb, Mohammed Shaaf, Najeeb Sahab, thank you for your very valuable input. We have with us Ashfaq, Yousuf, Tola, who's a senior economist. Ji, can you hear me?
Yes.
Ji, Ashfaq Sahab, overall the measures as far as, you know, this crackdown on smuggling is concerned, how effective do you think it's going to be in terms of bringing down the dollar and strengthening the rupee, in your opinion, in the short term and long term both?
Thank you very much, Mahrukh. Thank you for having me in your show, and Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Actually, this was long awaited. And when you can see the report of Bloomberg on May 19, that the real effective exchange rate of Pakistan currency is 245. And at that time, the dollar was being treated at 280. So at that juncture, I even told my minister that we should crack down on these smugglers and hoarders, and we should take immediate steps to boost up the remittances from the foreign for Pakistani workers working abroad, and we must clamp down on those who are hoarding dollars outside Pakistan, those who are exporters, and in fact IT exporters as well. So this was long awaited. I think now there is no political compulsion, so you are looking at the action.
Fair enough. As far as the Special Facilitation Council is concerned, and one of the terms again used by the Minister for Finance today was, I want to a whole of government approach. How relevant do you think it is, and how different do you think it's going to be from the approach taken earlier? Is it going to have effects? Does it mean taking along all government departments? What does it mean in your opinion?
Well, as SIFC is as far as SIFC is concerned, I think it's a good idea, and it came in the last government. I know for sure, and I was also participative of it. Most of the projects which we see now, they are basically export oriented. But it's too short of a time for this government, a caretaker setup, to complete it. So in my humble view, their job will remain in middle and in between. They have to give it to the elected government. So I think the baseline, which is the other stakeholder, which is Pakistan Army and armed forces, they will remain an integral part of it. And I think they are the main stakeholders now because they want to revive the economy. It is now and never for Pakistan. I think let's pray for their success and let the new government come up. And unlike the previous government, which shut down the CPAC, which has damaged Pakistan's economy colossally, I think this time we have to act in a smart manner.
The PTI government, you mean?
Exactly.
Ashfaq Sahib, in terms of uncertainty, as an economist, the role that uncertainty plays, in fueling the markets, in tempering the markets, how important do you think it is? And as far as, of course, like you said also, the caretaker government has a limited mandate. Do you think that factor is still relevant today as far as the economy is concerned, or you think it's reduced significantly?
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, this is a very short tenure government, and I don't think they'll take many policy decisions which need a long-term implementation plan. But Mahrukh, the entire world is in the grip of the recession, and I know for sure that you can just watch, you can just read, you can just feel that the difference outside Pakistan is not very much. We are basically having a double-edged sword like a situation, because we are facing the commodity inflation, which the world is in the grip right now. Moreover, our next problem, which was more problematic, was actually the devaluation of the currency, the rampant devaluation. And every 10 rupee of devaluation is adding 1.5% of inflation. So, in my humble view, the real effective exchange rate should be nearby 240, 250 or 260 max. We have to bring it down, and we have to really make it life very easy for those who are unable to afford it right now. Even the impact of these inflation is really now on the upper middle class and higher class. So we have to control it, and to control it, we have to control the smuggling of dollars and other commodities. But I must say that we must end now this era of support price and let the market forces determine what we have to buy and what we have to sell. Because in international market, the value of, say, sugar right now is maybe 200 rupees per kg. And in Pakistan, if we try to sell it at 140, it is not tenable. and it will provoke and it will obviously damage our economy and provoke smuggling, which was the cause, because in the last era when we produced 8.8 million ton of sugar, out of that we have allowed only 250,000 metric ton for the export. The rest 1.4 million is estimated to be smuggled in our nearby countries where the rates are very high. So we have to clamp down everything. We have to see from practical point of view. Yes, obviously we must have some humanitarian factor and we must live as a very good neighbor, but we have to consider our economy and Pakistan first.
Ishfaq sir, what about another, as far as, you mentioned, of course, globally there's recession, but in terms of the disparity that unfortunately exists in Pakistan at this time, isn't that also in a sense unique to Pakistan?
It is unique. Obviously, as I said to you earlier, that we are not only facing the inflation on account of Ukraine war or some other crisis, but we are facing inflation because of devaluation as well. And I said that we, after even signing the IMF agreement, we have to open up the trade. So meaning that last year we had import of $47 billion. And year before last, we had an import of $80 billion. So there's a gap of almost $23 billion as far as our current account deficit is concerned. And how we will fill this gap will be a Herculean task for anyone to, whomsoever they may be as a finance minister, it is a very gigantic task for him or her.
Fair enough. Thank you so much for your time, Ashfaq Saab. Thank you for your very valuable input. That's all the time that we have. Thank you for joining us. Overall, of course, as far as the economy is concerned, we are looking at the government taking stringent measures, like we had in the discussion today also. These measures are going to have short-term as well as long-term consequences, the way that the government is clamping down on smuggling. We'll be overall, of course, looking at the way the market reacts, the way, in the next couple of weeks to be sure how much it strengthens as far as the rupee is concerned. But overall, certainly it's a welcome measure, and we hope that it's as effective as the government is hoping that it will be. Thank you so much for joining us today.